So if you didn't guess by Friday's show, this week we're taking a break from Kent the Dimwit and just going straight for the jugular. The biblical account of Noah's flood. Yes, this is going to be a crossover with Faith Around and Find Out, but this is kind of the Young Earth version of it. So let's rain on the Young Earthers parade and see if the story of Noah holds any scientific value for Young Earth creationism. Now, you'll hear Young Earthers go on about how the flood of Noah took place 4,400 years ago, meaning that it was 2,400 years before Jesus walked the earth. To be fair as possible to them, I will be using the King James version of the Bible. Yeah, I know it's corrupt, but the entire thing is bullshit anyway, so really, what do we care if it's an intentional mistranslation? There's no video for this, so Angel, you can just use text like you usually do if you want to comment. Okay then, Angel, you ready? Demon, you ready?
Of course, sir.
Sounds good. The story of Noah really starts in chapter 6, though its name is mentioned in chapter 5 by his genealogy. We're not too worried about that right now. We start out talking about how the world was. Women were pretty, men married them and had kids. God said that mankind would only live for 120 years from then on in chapter 6, verse 3. Remember that for the future. You know when Kent brings out his little genealogy timesheet and says something happened in the flood to cause everyone to die a lot sooner after the flood? This is why. Nothing to do with the flood itself. God just decided everyone needed a shorter lifespan. But then, 2 verses later, in verses 5 through 7, he said he's just going to kill everyone. So then, why the shorter lifespans? Any of that make sense to you?
No.
Me neither. Anyway, the Bible continues, saying Noah walks with God, and he's got 3 kids, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Keep going.
So God said to Noah, he is planning on the biggest mass genocide that history has ever seen, and he'll kill everyone. But Noah, and his kids, and his kids' wives. He commands an ark to be made out of gopher wood. What the fuck is gopher wood anyway? No one knows. So, some mythical tree that we never hear about again. The gopher tree. Yay! Anyway, Noah is to make rooms in the ark, cover the entire thing with pitch. The ark is to be made 300 by 50 by 30 cubits, which translates to 450, 75, and 45 feet. Let's pause here a moment and talk about those measurements. That would be the world record for the largest wooden vessel on the water. Currently, that stands at the sailing ship the New England Gaff schooner Wyoming. But even then, the Wyoming was too large for the open seas. Because of its sheer size, the waves would twist and turn her and bend the planks, and it would let water inside the ship. Thus, pumps would churn out all the water they could so the ship would stay afloat. It sank in 1924 from flooding and sank with the loss of all hands aboard. Now, the deck was only 350 feet, and the length included the front sail beam, meaning it wasn't even close to the length of Noah's boat, built by 4 people that were complete novices when it comes to shipbuilding. Not to mention it's supposedly a glorified box. What is described is not seaworthy. Back to the Bible. So, after the size of this thing being absolute shit, God says that he is to get 2 of every living thing of all flesh. Genesis chapter 6 verses 19 and 20. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shall thou bring up unto the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. So what is this saying exactly, since this is a big point for young earthers? Of every living thing, if all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark. This is the main point. This is telling what should be brought up. The next verse, where it talks about kinds, now more clearly is talking about individual species and not species types, like Kent and other young Earth creations try to talk about to debunk evolution. So Kent, this, taken in context, is asking for every species of animal. So a dog kind and a wolf kind are two different kinds. It even verifies when it says every creeping thing of the earth as well. So really, Kent is dead wrong, and the Ark wants two of each individual species of animal. Anyway, chapter 6 ends with God telling Noah to stock the Ark up with food. It wouldn't be structurally sound enough with just the animals, so why not stock it up with food too? Chapter 7, where God repeats himself. He just told Noah to build an ark and take 2 of every animal, but now tells him to take 7 of every clean animal and 2 of everything else. But birds he is again supposed to take 7. So really it's 7 of most animals. We just increased in weight by a multiple of 3. On a 450-foot ark with enough food to last a year. Now, the rest of the chapter is just a repeat of everything that generally said the things God wanted to happen, happened. The next key part here is chapter 7, verse 20, but I will read from 19 to stay in context. Genesis chapter 7, verses 19 and 20. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Interesting. 15 cubits upward did water prevail. I read that as the water level rose 15 cubits. That's 22 feet 6 inches. However, it does say that the mountains were covered. So let's say that the text is trying to say that it was 15 cubits above the tops of the mountains. So what's the tallest mountain in the area that Noah would have seen? Keeping in mind they were somewhere in Mesopotamia. This is a region going from most of Iraq, starting at the Persian Gulf, going into Syria, following the Euphrates and Tigris rivers to touch along the Mediterranean Sea at the north. It then stretches south along the shoreline through Israel to Egypt. It then follows along the Nile River. So the tallest mountains in the area are between 14,000 and 15,000 feet. There isn't enough free water on or in the planet to flood the planet that deep. From here, a typical young earther will say there are vast oceans of water under the surface. Where, yes, there is water under the surface, the water they refer to is trapped in the molecular structure of other materials. It's not free molecules of water to go out and do whatever it wants to. And even then, it's not enough water, even if it were 100 times the amount of water on the surface of the planet. From there, the Bible says the water stayed on the earth for roughly 150 days, so a bit less than half a year. Chapter 8 starts out oddly enough with, God remembered Noah. This implies that God forgot about him for a while, with the epiphany of, oh yeah, I killed all those humans and left one alive. Well shit, maybe I should do something about that. Killing humanity was so meaningless to God that he forgot he left someone alive. God pulled the plug on the global bathtub, and the ark rested on Mount Ararat in the 7th month. It took 3 more months for the tops of the mountains to be seen on the 10th month. Now, let's say this is 15 cubits above the mountain, is the height of the water. So in 3 months, the water came down 22.5 feet. Remember that. 22.5 feet. After some bit of dove flying, on the first day of the 1st month, the water was finally all gone. So in 2 months, 14,000 feet of water drained, but it took 3 months for 22 feet of water to drain away. And that's just the tallest local mountain. We're giving them the benefit of the doubt here. Someone, please tell me the logic here. I mean, granted, the earth was mud, and it was another month and a half until the ground was dry, but holy fuck. It's like a slow roll for a while, and then whoosh. With an average of 30 days in a month, that would mean the water would drop 233 feet per day, almost 10 feet per hour, or about 2 inches every minute, and that calculation is based on 14,000 feet. That's the low end of the scale. 15,000 feet would be 250 feet of drainage per day. So what happened? The ark got stuck, so God finally pulled out his ShamWow or something? Now, everyone gets to leave the ark in a dramatic storybook sort of way, ending with Noah taking one of every clean animal and sacrificing it on an altar he built. God enjoyed the burnt offering, enjoyed the animal sacrifice, and God said he wouldn't kill everyone again like that because he understood that mankind's hearts are always going to be evil, so let them be evil all they want. That is verse 21 of chapter 8 in Genesis, where God finally figured out that humans he created were always going to be shit, so maybe he should live with what he created. Brilliant. God learned a lesson, and it only took the murder of every human on the planet except Noah, his kids, and their wives. Now, the story does continue on chapter 9, but this is the Monday Night Young Earth Takedown, and chapter 9 is more in tune for a Friday show. So what have we learned? The story of Noah is inconsistent at best and outright fabricated at worst. The Epic of Gilgamesh actually contains the flood story and predates the Genesis account. Adding on to that, there are flood stories and tales from every civilization, from the dawn of civilization. They all have flood myths, ranging from the epic we mentioned to China and Africa. It's more rare for an area to not have a flood myth. The thing is, they're all different and radically different. So differing that they must be different events, but all referencing a global flood, because they didn't know any better. How is this possible? Simple. It's not. It is far more reasonable to think that each event is a different event in actual history that flooded locally, but was so devastating that humanity embellished on the times with folklore, getting more and more elaborate in each telling, until you have the written word we have today, where these fantastical stories are then printed, with a few, like the biblical account, being said to be true, though it is absolutely impossible. If you ever want to see some scary shit, go have a look at flash flood videos. 1 minute, everything is dry as a bone, and the next, deluge of water immersing an entire area. They can hit in minutes and cover a region for days and days. Imagine a desert community getting hit with one of these without warning. The water ripping through the landscape from the mountains in the north. Homes, villages, and livestock all destroyed, but a few people that knew that these things were possible, building a raft for those times they knew it could happen again. Communities would laugh, but he saw the signs of large amounts of snow in the distant mountains. He takes his livestock and puts them on his raft at the first sign of rain hitting the mountains and watching the snow melt off in the distance. It's happened to him before. He gets his 3 sons to help him get the livestock on the raft, and they are safe when the water comes rushing through. A few days later, and the water subsides. They tell a tale, a bit of an over-dramatization of the story, corroborated by other survivors. The next generation talks about it. Now their ancestor was the only survivor. Next generation, where no survivors at all in nearby regions other than their ancestor, because the flood took out the entire continent. Then you have it worldwide, and an entire earth was submerged in a global flood. Then that flood was brought down by the god of their choice. Oh no! Someone should write all this down. The story of Noah made with simple game of generational telephone after an intense local flash flood. Think all this is garbage? Well, this video was made in September of 2024. But in March of 2024, there was a widespread flash floods all through Iraq. More massive flash floods in Syria in September of 2023, Azerbaijan a month earlier in 2023, and just 2.5 months ago in Armenia in May of 2024. All around the same region as the story of Noah took place. Flash flooding is common in these areas. All it would take is a truly epic-sized flood, and presto, a flood myth is born. Oh, I bet you think that's garbage too, right? Off the coast in the northwestern United States, there is the Cascadia Subduction Zone, where the Pacific Plate is being pushed under the North American Plate. On January 6th, 1700, an earthquake occurred that caused massive flooding onto Washington State's coastline. Less than 300 years later, local native villages were telling a story of a thunderbird and a giant whale having a battle off in the ocean, and that was what caused the waves and flooding. Yet we know the exact date of the flood and approximate time that it happened overnight. Natives of the area are still telling the same story today, even though we know exactly what really happened. One last thing before I go. Remember at the start when I mentioned God said the oldest humans would get is 120 years? Jeanne Calment was a woman from France born on the 21st of February, 1875, and died on the 4th of August, 1997, making her 122 years, 164 days old. So, yeah, that was a thing that happened. I am Corsi, and this is The Fluffy Atheist. Hit those like and subscribe buttons, and remember, a little research does go a long way. Let The Fluffy Atheist do it for you.